white knighting. I can't possibly white knight because I don't meet the required height limits to be a white knight. But I am going to vigorously defend yet again Riley Gaines, who seems to be the object of ire of a great many people, and they think they've got a gotcha when in fact they've only gotten themselves. Behold.
Wait, tell me the pillars again. So it's pro-life.
So, First Amendment, Second Amendment, sanctity of life, and veteran and first responders.
Okay.
And
First, second.
conservatives.
Yep. Cool. The First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the sanctity of life, our veterans, I feel very passionately about. Do you guys, if you're going to talk about, I mean, you hate to even call them political issues, but do you specifically say like the left or the right, or is that something you try to kind of refrain from? Like if I were to say something to the effect of like the left is still doubling down.
Hold on, pause here, just so everybody understands exactly what's going on. They call this leaked footage. It's actually just, the unedited footage of what an ad read actually looks like in real life. And they think they've got a gotcha because Riley Gaines is asking Patriot Mobile to reiterate their talking points in an ad, which everyone understands is a paid for. But that's not to say that if you get paid for something to run an ad for a bad company or a bad product, you can be judged for it. When you run an ad and you sponsor or get sponsored by, this is what happens. Those beautiful commercials where you see like Michael Jordan selling Wheaties, or can't think of anybody else right now. They take multiple takes to make sure they get a good take. And a good take on this is not to say, she doesn't hold these values at all. She has to ask what to say in an ad read because it's basically a rehearsed ad read.
Yeah, you can say. Okay, I've heard you introduce from the beginning, so.
Okay, first, that's what I needed to figure out really quick is when I first, I mean, definitely over a year though.
I'm putting on pause. I don't even care to watch this. Who is the original bum who posted this? That's what I want to know about. The original bum who posted this. Oh, yes, that's right. They had an F Trump in their they had an F Trump in their banner. That's how you know they're good faith players. People don't seem to understand. Like back in the day when I used to do those car vlogs, you'd sit in the car, look at a camera, and you'd say the line or the line. You would, in my case, I had no script, just stream of consciousness. But if I said something, I want to get it right. And I'd start and I'd stop and I'd, sometimes you have to snap to get your mind to clear so that you can remember where you're at. If anybody saw the raw, unedited footage, I always said, it's like, this is why I didn't like using editors. They'd think I was crazy. And I would have a hard time disagreeing with them. These idiots out there who, for whatever the reason, feel the need to go after Riley Gaines in particular. And the amazing thing is, like, there's no good reason to go after Riley Gaines. And she gets attacked from the left, and if we consider Laura Loomer to be the right, from the right as well, because, she has the audacity of being an apostate of a woman who says, no, I'm not on this transgender ideology bandwagon. And she has the audacity of being an apostate back in the day of being a DeSantis supporter, I think, which draws the ires of all of the enforcers, as we call them, the Donald Brashears and the Marty McSorleys of the political interwebs. But I was going to start with something else, actually, before we start. I've chimed in a little bit on the video of the woman in Brazil being literally thrown off a bridge because they literally didn't realize that they had not attached a rope to her prior to doing this. I'm not playing the video. If you want to see awful things, the internet is for porn and also watching people die. I mean, they literally have a subreddit, by the way, on that toxic, I call it a terrorist training ground Reddit. They had a subreddit called r//watch people die. They had so many subreddits, which I won't even mention them because I only know of them because people report on them. I only know about them because I was there to find out how to get away from being there. Now, it's a hellhole. You want to see terrible things, you can see terrible things. There's a phenomenon, and I forget what the name of it is, that the more people watching something happen, the less likely any one individual is to intervene. When I took my CPR course way back in the day, and they say when something happens, You got to identify one individual and make sure that one individual goes, dials 911, and comes back to you and confirms it. When I was at our bowling league and a woman fell backwards and bashed her head on the bowling return thing, and I'm sitting there like, I'm watching this thing like, has anybody called 911 yet? I was like, no. It's like, so I then pick up and dial 911. The more people watching something, the more they abdicate responsibility to the aggregate. This woman literally got picked up by two men, watched by a third, recorded by a fourth and a fifth, and nobody stopped to say, hey, guys, there's no rope on her. Now, once upon a time, I did the world's longest in in Whistler, British Columbia. Check this out. This was the moment where, you sit down and you go 120 kilometers an hour, 90 miles an hour. No, that's not what it is. 120 is it's my problem. 50 miles an hour is 80. 80 is about one. Whatever. Fast.
Try not to leave them and hang them up because they will swing back.
Wait, go with the other guy.
All right, walk down those stairs for me.
Two.
Viva Fry.
Yeah, Viva Fry.
All right. I'm gonna kind of sit down into your harness, bend your knees.
Oh my God!
It was fast. You'll have to go watch the rest of it if you want to see how it ends. But spoiler, I survived. The whole point is like when you're doing these things, people have the idea of thinking, well, they're professionals. They don't want me to die any more than I want to die. And when I'm driving, like with you get into an Uber or a taxi, and these taxi drivers, especially in Quebec for whatever the reason, drive like raging lunatics. And people have this tendency of thinking, well, they're professionals. You're relying on people who may or may not be, the most astute observers or the most qualified individuals on earth, and you're literally trusting your life to them. When I did that zip line, and it was called the Sasquatch in Whistler, I asked, how does it work? How old's the equipment? Are we using reverse non-locking carabiners, or are we using an auto-locking carabiner? Screw lock or regular lock? You make sure. This woman and everybody watching was thrown off of a bridge. And by the way, they weren't even using, from what I understand, bungee cord. It's what they call like a canyon swing. You don't do it with static line. Won't give everybody a rock climbing course now, but when you set up an anchor, you set up with static line so that there's no flex in the rope, because you don't want the anchor flexing when you take a fall. But when you rock climb, the rope that you use is anywhere between 6 and 10% elasticity. And so even a rock climbing rope has a certain degree of elasticity to it. So when you do these canyon swings, you jump and there's a little bit of stretch. So 6 to 10 feet per 100 feet, which is usually ropes are 150 to 180 feet. They were doing a canyon swing. And they forgot to make sure that the woman was attached before they threw her off a bridge. And then apparently the employees who realized they done messed up tried to evade arrest, tried to flee the scene. They got arrested. A 21-year-old Instagram influencer is dead because she didn't bother to take the preliminary and most essential steps to make sure that the people that she was trusting her life to deserved that honor. People, how goes the battle? Viva Fry, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida rumbler. This is our Sunday night show, and it's going to be a banger as usual. Robert Barnes will be here imminently. I want to show everybody where they can find our podcast right now. I take everything and I put it with video on the interwebs afterwards. And for those of, I'm not addressing a complaint, and I'm not getting angry. Some people out there complain that they don't appreciate that a certain portion of the Sunday show and my daily show, 3 o'clock on Rumble, is for vivabarneslaw.locals.com supporters and Rumble Premium supporters. To which I say, on the one hand, I understand the concern, but we do things to support the people, perks for the people who actually financially support the work that we do. That being said, you want to watch it afterwards, it's all up on podcast format and Spotify. How do I share? Go now, if you are so inclined. Follow on Spotify. I don't know how this works. I'm going to give everybody the link. No, those are the details. How do I share? Go like this. And yeah, go check it out on Spotify. I'm going to copy the link and give it to everyone here. Subscribe, leave comments there. You know what to do. But it includes the after show. So if you're miffed that you don't get to participate in real time, on the one hand, too bad. We do things that we like to give perks to our actual supporters who make it possible for us to do what we do. And you can watch it in replay the next day. Now, that said, I see Barnes, who still seems to be a long way from home. Sir, how goes the battle?
Can you hear me okay?
Oh yeah, I hear you. You're wearing headphones. You look like a teen who's playing gaming for the first time. Sir, you are looking younger. Did you get a?
I'm out in out near Palm Springs. So the group of buddies of mine, they come out here once a year. So so out near the desert, and this got a pool that's like a hotel pool for a house, which is wild. I mean, it's like an Olympic-sized pool with a palm tree in the middle, huge hot tub, huge outdoor grill, and so just chilling and having some fun.
People say you're reverbing. Well, you're using the mic from your camera because you're on the road, so we're going to deal with it. I'll touch up the audio.
There's a different mic I could use that would change that.
Nah, forget it. Do you have a mic on those headphones?
Not on the headphones, but on the laptop. Probably.
No, then don't worry about it. Don't worry. It's Robertson.
Come on, guys. There's like these huge ceilings, so echo doesn't surprise me.
Are you playing a bit of poker out there with your friends?
Yeah. Oh yeah. They tied last night, so we chop it up once it gets down to the final two. So finished in the final two, so that was fun, and probably play again tonight.
I'm going to see if I got echo cancellation on, so that's as good as it's going to get. People, we'll have to deal with it. Barnes is on the road, sir. There's so much to that just broke. I mean, literally within the hour or two before we go live. But Robert, you want to say what we've got on the menu for tonight?
So we got SCOTUS, got the issue of criminal venue. That case was finally decided, or one of the key cases concerning it was decided. The right to sue under federal law. When is that exclusively within regulatory agency control? And when is it something the individual can seek legal relief on their own terms? Equitable power related to bankruptcy. And when does collateral estoppel, when does other forms of judicial estoppel apply? When is the death penalty or the method of the death penalty a violation of the Eighth Amendment?
I don't mean to laugh at that one. That one, I'm reading the decision and sort of laughing, but we'll get to the absurdity of it in a bit.
So that's the quartet of Supreme Court decisions. We have a self-defense case out of South Carolina about when does a finding of self-defense in the criminal context provide immunity from civil suit due to the way self-defense is structured in South Carolina. And similarly related there too, a case from a couple of weeks ago, but we didn't get the chance to address the Murdaugh murder, the verdict overthrown by the Supreme Court of South Carolina to create an entirely new trial. What happened in that case might not be that uncommon. It just got profiled in ways often, I think, missed by other courts. The Iran war, do we have a memorandum of understanding that might be signed today or this week or not? Dr. Trita Parsi, who we had on our sidebar, the founder of the Quincy Institute, is being targeted by the Israel lobby for deportation. They want to deport him for being such an effective critic of various foreign policy connected to Israel, but also the Iran war. The Karmelo Anthony verdict is in, and the jury also determined the sentence, which I didn't know you could do that in Texas. Apparently you can. Credit to them. I've always favored jurors over judges making sentencing decisions. That used to be part of their jury power constitutionally until judges took it away from them. The Trump UFC, is it going forward in an hour or two? Short answer, yes. Long answer, why? We'll get to that. What happened
and weather permitting, there seems to be some weather concerns.
Interesting. The Sam Bankman-Fried appeal goes to the Second Circuit. Does he get a reprieve, or is his appeal denied? And in California, the state government is suing a county because its voters passed voting reforms, including no more mass mail-in voting. You have to have voter ID to register, voter ID to vote. You have to actually hand count the ballots. Well, that's all heresy in the state of California. So they're suing, demanding that that voter fraud is a right of the state of California, and they demand it go on. So we'll be discussing that case and your questions on this version of Law for the People.
I was just advised by Roostang that I had a couple of material typos in my headline because I'm an idiot and my fingers are not as skinny as they used to be. Corrected it, Roostang. Thank you, Robert. Let's start. I guess let's start with the Iranian stuff just to get the highly popular and highly unifying stuff out of the way. Robert, I don't know what's in the memorandum of understanding, the MOU with Iran, but what I do love is now watching some of the folk who were calling everybody under the sun black pillars, doom pillars for criticizing Trump, now criticizing Trump. Mark Levin has been coming after Trump extremely hard. I didn't, at first I wasn't exactly sure what was going on, but let me bring this up here because you gotta love it when it's kind of funny. Is Mark Levin comes out and says, I can't tell you how many people, several of whom you know, who are contacting me out of grave concern. Now, that's a little bit of a vague post, but under the context, he's talking about what appears to be an agreement with Iran and Trump having admonished, reprimanded Israel for having struck certain purported Hezbollah targets in Lebanon after Hezbollah launched a couple, I don't know if it's rockets that didn't kill anybody, and Israel launched retaliatory strikes on the eve of an apparent agreement, killing, I think it's 3 civilians. I'm not sure. And, and then Mark Levin also had another one that said, I literally had to reread Trump's truth post twice because I couldn't believe my eyes. And so now all of a sudden the new MAGA, who called all of the old MAGA, who are actually America Firsters, black pillars, doom pillars, panicans, are now themselves feeling very empowered to criticize Trump when they don't like a decision that he's made. What's your understanding of what is in the MOU that appears to have already been signed with Iran?
We'll see. I mean, my understanding is the core agreement was reached all the way back at the original ceasefire. So the first week of April, the agreement was that Iran would reopen the Straits of Hormuz after the U.S. ended all blockades, and there was a ceasefire on all fronts. That there would be no more Israel attacks into Lebanon. There would be no more Hezbollah attacks into Israel. There would be no more U.S. attacks on Iran, and there would be no more Iranian attacks on the U.S. military bases or its allies in the region. And that was the original sort of core agreement. Trump kept rug pulling it. So Vance probably got the deal done about a half dozen times. And Trump at the end would rug pull, and because he didn't like the blowback from the Mark Levins, the Fox Newses, the Lindsey Grahams, that crowd. And so then he would walk back the deal that was done, and they would have to go back and try to start all over again. And each time they did, Iran increased the price. So Iran went, well, we'll reopen the strait in 30 days. So when we do reopen the strait, it will be under Iranian control, and we'll be charging fees for accessing the strait and entering and exiting the strait. And then Trump had that deal and blew it up, usually facilitated by Israel bombing Lebanon constantly right when an agreement was about to be signed. And these are just temporary agreements. This is just a ceasefire, memorandum of understanding. It doesn't have any permanent agreement to it whatsoever. It's just to stop the risk of escalation and things going off at any given time, and to reopen the strait, essentially, which is the most important aspect of this from the global economic perspective and Trump's political domestic perspective. This is an old Cuban style shirt.
I like you're getting more compliments than hate, but I had to bring up the funny one. What's wrong with the shirt from 1989? Sorry to interrupt, Robert.
Yeah, all the way back to the 1930s, 1940s. They hand make these still in Cuba. But you can get them from non-Cuban sources these days as well. Though the best ones are made in Cuba. The way they make the cotton is very breathy. So it's like the way the Hong Kong folks make their suits. They're good in warm weather, good in cool weather. It's fascinating for those that are out there and so inclined. So the latest deal is that Iran required money be delivered. They were like, no more trusting the U.S. As has now gone public, my hypothesis of Trump that he's suffering from some form of decision-making decline due to whether it's frontal lobe behavioral dementia, early stage, or it's something else, whatever it is, his decision-making isn't what it used to be because his methods are not what they used to be. In other words, he doesn't seek out second opinions. He gets angry when he receives them. He doesn't contingency plan. He just assumes the best will happen and the worst can't happen, confabulates on a regular basis, and his positive thinking is now converted into confabulation, believing things that are true that are not, believing things are not true that are. And that has made Vance's job, who's taken the lead at trying to get a deal done, very, very difficult. But the Iranians, as has now come out by Jeremy Shahill at the drop site, they're some of the best war reporters in the world. They reported that Iran about a month ago made the same conclusion, that Trump was not acting in a purely rational way, that it wasn't the old Trump they were dealing with. So they had to refit their negotiation strategy around his new psychology. And as they did so, they learned to dismiss a lot of the rhetoric and language. They learned to filter through what they needed to show Trump was legit was action. And the actions now are withdrawal of our military presence from the immediate vicinity of Iran, including presence in those military bases in the Gulf, and withdrawal of all of our ships from a place where they could even blockade, and a release of about $24 billion of Iranian funds that had been frozen by U.S. orders going back 50 years. Actually, the total amount frozen is like $300 billion, but the amount that's immediately they were requiring as sort of a good faith payment of trust and confidence was $24 billion. And the $24 billion is going to be delivered by other countries. Some of it already has been by the Emiratis, the Qataris, and others. So it will be disguised as something other than monetary relief, because Trump hates the comparison to Obama's JCPOA. And then there'll be a verbal commitment, which Iran frankly has always had, but Trump can use it and parlay it to put some political defense of his position, which is that they will not have nor attempt to procure a nuclear weapon. And then they will go to a next stage of negotiations over 60 days. Also, all sanctions would be released on Iranian oil exports for 60 days. So they get $24 billion in the bank. They get continuous control of the strait, which they can charge fees for $1-2 million a pop per ship. And they can get all of their, at inflated prices, get all of their oil out that's already out of the high seas, and all the oil that they have out and about for 60 days. And in exchange, what the U.S. gets is the no closure in the Straits of Hormuz. So those 1,000+ ships still sitting in the Gulf can get out, and other ships can get in and out, and start to get the fertilizer and fuel and things like various things that go into make helium, to go into semiconductor chips and the like, that are messing up the supply chain out into the global economic marketplace as expeditiously as possible. So it achieves what Trump needed to achieve, which was to open the straits for commercial traffic. It achieves what Iran needed to achieve, which was some economic relief with no blockade, relief of sanctions, and money back in the bank, without forfeiting any of its nuclear material or nuclear program until a later discussion time frame, and the stop of Israel going into Beirut. The big question is, will Israel honor such an agreement? They've told Trump that they will, but frequently what happens is they sabotage it. They attack Beirut right in the middle of this being signed. They've done this now a half dozen times, where they've sabotaged the agreement. Bibi Netanyahu sees his political future is tied to continuous conflict up through the October or November elections. Yeah, and that's the hurdle.
Just to steelman the response to that, I mean, Israel is saying we're retaliating because they've launched a new wave of attacks from Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Yeah, they have. I mean, the problem is they've initiated almost all of these attacks. So it's usually Hezbollah responding. They've razed whole communities to the ground. They have a big military presence now. They're doing the same thing in the West Bank, declaring that they're going to take more settlements there, also breaking the ceasefire in Gaza. It looks like the Iranians are willing to not hold up the agreement for the West Bank or Gaza, but they are willing to hold up the agreement for Lebanon to quit being attacked. And that means, and so Hezbollah has said before they'll honor a ceasefire. If Israel will honor the ceasefire, Israel has made clear repeatedly that it won't. And that's the question. Trump has been escalating his rhetoric towards Netanyahu, saying, nobody likes you. You keep making bad judgments and bad decisions. But there is great doubt about whether Trump has the willingness. He clearly has the capacity. If we tell Israel no more support, period, they will immediately, stop their attacks, because they depend entirely on U.S. military and intelligence support for these ongoing activities, especially in Lebanon. The question is what will if Trump comes fully out against Bibi Netanyahu in Israel, Bibi's done because Trump is more popular than Bibi in Israel. So that's the X factor. And right now there's a new general, former IDF general, who is surging in the Israeli public opinion in the polls and may beat both Bibi Netanyahu and Naftali Bennett. Naftali Bennett is known as a hardliner himself and has an indistinguishable position. He's basically Bibi without the Naftali Bennett's campaign is Bibi without the corruption. The new general that's surging, his campaign is go back to original Zionism. Ben Gurion, I always mispronounce that guy's name. But one of the founders who said Israel's too small, we have to stay within our borders. We can't be an expansionistic regional hegemon or try to be. And if we do, it will backfire on us because we just don't have the manpower. And that's what an increasing group of Israelis are voicing. They're saying this hasn't worked out. The Iran war hasn't worked out. What's going on in Lebanon hasn't worked out. What's going on in Gaza hasn't worked out. We're now a pariah to the whole world. We're losing public support rapidly within the U.S. So it's time to reconsider, return to the original precepts of the Zionist founders of Israel, which was to not be an expansive government, to stay within its borders, pre-1967 borders, what they were talking about, by the way. So at a minimum, return to prior to the borders determined in the Gaza ceasefire, respect the independent rights of the people in the West Bank, and stay out of Beirut and Lebanon. Lebanon's always been a nemesis for Israel anyway. They went in the 80s, it blew back on them. They went in the early 2000s, it blew back on them. It's already blowing back on them now. They've lost an extraordinary number of soldiers and tanks from drone attacks by Hezbollah. Hezbollah clearly is not wiped out at all. The Shia population is now a plurality of Lebanon, and they almost overwhelmingly back Hezbollah as a political movement. So it's time for Israel to step back. What Joe Cannon said from the get-go is still correct. The old Reagan strategy is the best strategy, which what Reagan did after our troops were attacked in Beirut was withdraw America's military presence and tell Israel to stand down. And that's what Trump has always had to do. Joe Kenneth has been right about this from the get-go. Withdraw our military presence from the Gulf at the level that it's at and tell Israel to stand down. Do that and the economy reopens globally, and the worst of Trump's political risk domestically it might be mitigated. And this is why he signed the deal, and this is why Vance has been pushing for the deal. But the X factor is still Israel trying to blow it up at the last possible minute, and Trump not wanting to be humiliated and can't handle criticism from the Israel lobby on Fox News and Mark Levin and Mark Thiessen and all these other guys who abandon him the moment he's not doing Israel's bidding. Well, that shows you what a total hypocrite these people are.
There's a handful of the accounts. Robert, satisfy my neuroses a little bit. Tilt your computer screen down just a touch so that, a little more. There you go. Oh, there we go. Now that's more realistic proportions. Okay. So now people in the chat saying once upon a time, Lebanon used to be a tourist spot. And
the Beirut was the Paris of the Middle East.
Then it's always just going to be the back and forth, and who's responsible. They're going to say, so long as Lebanon houses Hezbollah and allows terrorist attacks, it's fair game. At some point, fair game to go in and launch strikes. Then the only question is what's proportionate. At what point do you say, if we haven't achieved the objective by now, what more is it going to take short of leveling Beirut and Lebanon the way Gaza has been leveled? Okay, well, it's so that looks to be the framework. I love the fact that we are seeing the people who were praising Trump and dumping on those who said maybe this Iran conflict is not the best strategic move, now turning on Trump because he's not going far enough. I don't know what the end goal is in what they want, but agreement seems to be signed, and on the eve of the 250th, or at least on the UFC 250. So good news, I guess.
Do you have any picks for the UFC fights tonight?
Yeah, I put them out. I'm going to be following this as it goes. I don't know what happened. I think it seems like the left column, as they're listed, is heavy. Like Diego Lopez, Bo Nickel. I have to double check my my picks, but I put them out there. I'm going to be following this as we go. But now, Robert. So that's the Iran deal, and
Yeah, we got the Dr. Parson.
Yeah. Now hold on. You just started going totally robotic. Talk again.
Oh, I didn't mean. Now we have Dr. Parson. Parsi as well.
Now what did you do, Robert? What did you touch?
Nothing. It's just the speaker probably closer.
No. You did something. Now you're on. Now you sound gobbledygook. You might have to come out and come back in because that audio is not going to. What did you do, Robert?
I have no idea. I just moved the camera.
This is why I say don't. Okay. No, come out of the stream. Come back in. You turned into a robot.
I got you.
This is it. Yeah, one little button. Okay, let's see if this is. This is why. Leave good enough alone, people. Why did you tell me to do that? Nobody told me to do that. It was my own neuroses. Fingers crossed.
How about
that? Okay, good. Trita Parsi. Now, so Trita Parsi, he's been on the channel. He's Quincy Institute, foreign policy. That anybody would say he's sort of doing the bidding of the Iranian government, to me, it's asinine to the point where there's no way of fixing that level of a broken brain. Because in as much as he's got righteous criticism, respectful, logical, well defended, for anybody to say that he's doing the bidding of the Iranian regime, the IRGC, what is it, IRGC? The IRG, to say that he's doing the bidding of a terrorist regime, it's not just a stretch, it's a lie. He's been on the channel. Reports broke last week that the administration was looking for a way to deport him. He's a green card holder, not a citizen, been in the States for I don't know how many decades. I think he's been here for a while. I do know that Laura Loomer was referenced in the article that I read during my show last week. She's been out saying, cancel his visa. It's the most malicious, tortious interference with his, contract with the government. But alas, some voices seem to resonate. I have not seen official confirmation from the administration, and I refuse to believe it, because it's not like Trita Parsi is Mahmoud Khalil, who, whether or not you thought they overstepped the bounds there, at least there was video evidence of him saying, yes, we're going to occupy Columbia University and raise shit, and I'm a little bit more than the negotiator. I'm an active participant. This man has done nothing but promote, espouse, publicize his sincerely held beliefs of what he thinks is the right foreign policy. It hasn't been confirmed by the administration yet, but there are rumors, or at least stories, that they're looking for a way to cancel his green card and deport him for aiding and abetting. I don't know if you have any more information than I do. I think Trita might come on next week. I think he's may or may not have, I think he might be writing a Substack on this because he's going to address it. But what's your understanding of the serious, whether or not the administration is actually contemplating this?
I mean, the problem is the administration has been doing this kind of activity from the very beginning, which is they use their visa policies in the State Department to target critics of Israel. So a federal judge, the case that we previously covered, Reagan appointee, went through in detail how the administration basically took a list from an Israel lobby front group and targeted them with no independent investigation on top of it for removal, including, most controversially, the tough student that they picked up on the street. And it turned out all she got picked up for was writing an editorial in the student newspaper. I mean, that was it. I remember saying at the time, I hope that's not what's going on. It is what was going on. Harmeet Dillon, in case you had any doubts about her priorities, you can go to her X feed, or just go to where I think every single speaking engagement she has made for the last 3 months publicly has been some Israeli group. She goes to every single one and brags about how they are weaponizing the Civil Rights Division for the benefit of the Israel lobby. And so they picked up several people they claimed were related to Soleimani, the former general that we assassinated some years ago in Trump's first term. And the evidence came out that the people had no ties to Soleimani, not that family ties would be grounds to remove someone's green card to begin with. For those that don't remember, green cards have constitutional protection. If you have a green card in the United States, you are as protected under the First Amendment as a U.S. citizen. That has been established in the Harry Bridges cases that we've covered many times here since they were issued in the 1940s. Harry Bridges, a famous, I think, Australian communist activist who then dropped the communist part after he came to the U.S., but became a very effective labor union activist. And he was repeatedly, I think he had three cases go before the U.S. Supreme Court, and they reiterated that as a green card holder, he had First Amendment rights. The only grounds they cited for being critical of Dr. Parsi who was the founder of the Quincy Institute, named after John Quincy Adams, my old familial cousin, who said, "We do not go abroad searching for monsters to destroy." And that was the unique basis of the founding generation's foreign policy. It was anti-empire because they believed empire would kill a republic quicker than anything. Didn't matter that's why he said, it doesn't matter if that person is a monster. We don't go abroad searching for those monsters to destroy. People like Mike Pompeo couldn't process that. So then when he debated monsters to destroy, it was like, Iran's a monster, that's who must destroy him. No, John Quincy Adams' point and our founders was just the opposite. So Dr. Parsi found he's been here over a quarter century. I think it was Johns Hopkins he went to under Fuyakama. I always get his name mispronounced. Another name I mispronounced. But the old famous end of history guy. He was tortured. His father was tortured and mistreated by both the Shah's regime in Iran and by the Ayatollah's regime in Iran. He fled the Ayatollah's regime, left to Sweden, and then came to the United States as a grad student. Wrote Treacherous Alliance, which detailed all the different side deals, backdoor deals, deals that went sideways between Israel and Iran concerning the Middle East and the U.S. And from that point forward has been a target of the Israel lobby because he got a lot of inside access to people in Israel and Iran that exposed a lot of what Israel had been up to. And it was different than their court of public opinion pitch had been. He founds the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Publication has people like Professor John Mearsheimer, Stephen Walt, a wide range, Joe Kent, wide range of other very well-respected geopolitical realists. For his donations, he only has three requirements. One, every donation is transparent, discloses every single one. One of the only think tanks connected to foreign policy that does that. Secondly, he won't take any money from a government. Doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter where it is. Third, he doesn't take any money from the military-industrial complex. So he's the only geopolitical realist national security foundation. He takes very small amounts of donations from Open Society and the Koch Foundation. That's because Open Society is an Israel skeptic group, because George Soros has long been an Israel skeptic group. But their donations are less than 2% of their total revenue. They get very small donations from pretty much all the foundations kind of cover themselves by wanting to have a realist alternative at least be available to them to bounce off independent opinions in the foundation space. And Parsi was uniquely well respected. It is very apparent Parsi has been advocating for a deal that he thinks will lead to a change of the regime in Iran, just he doesn't think it can be achieved kinetically, and has a general disposition against war, no matter who is waging it. And so he's very much on the American side, and to the degree that he's on an Iranian side, it's against the regime. And anybody, you'd have to be deaf, dumb, and blind not to know that. That's why he's been encouraging the president to take a position that lifts sanctions, because he believes economic liberation can lead to the Iranian middle class being the principal source of resistance to the regime that persecuted his father. But at the same time, has no interest in the Shah's son coming back, because that was as repressive a regime that, again, had also persecuted his father and his family. So for any suggestion that, this is just overt, open intimidation, trying to use their power over green cards in ways that blatantly violate the Constitution, that Republican Reagan-appointed judges have already found Narco Marco, due to his family's long extended history and with the cocaine cowboys, and getting fabulously, getting some real economic means so that Narco Marco could go to law school and become a state representative and all the rest. Narco Marco's never seen a position he's not willing to tap dance around, you might say, or change or convert. But this attack on the First Amendment by the Trump administration on behalf of a foreign nation is getting way out of hand. And the attacks on Dr. Parsi are inexcusable, intolerable, unconstitutional, and unconscionable. And presumably the blowback that the State Department started to get when they floated this idea, it came out of Barry Weiss's so-called Free Press, written by a reporter, Jay Solomon, who got fired from the Wall Street Journal for his long history of making stuff up. So is it possible that this was just the Israel lobby trying to create this pressure? Yes. And there was no intention of the State Department to ever do it? Yes. Is there a possibility with this State Department that they did in fact intend to do so? That's also possible. Is it a threat trying to intimidate? Hey, if you're a green card holder, you better keep your mouth shut about the Trump administration and anything we don't like you saying, because maybe we'll randomly pick you up and deport you to a random country. Because they decided, like the Civil Rights Division, to use their Justice Department powers, not to stop censorship, but to promote it, and not to stop the abuse of power and lawfare, but to use it for their own personal and political aims. This is an outrageous case that it ever even came to the possibility of serious consideration or contemplation. But I'm hopeful it has died on the vine like it needed to.
I'm hopeful that it was actually just a rumor, and that the substantiation of the rumor came from what Laura Loomer actually said online. Because if some of her more irrational demands actually can be planted within the administration, then there's a bigger problem here. So as far as I understand, she's the only one who made the statement publicly, and maybe someone says, well, she's close enough to the administration so we can sort of argue or spread that rumor. I hope it's just a bad rumor. I trust it is, because it's not something that I would expect from this administration. And Trita, disagree with him all you want. He does nothing that supports.
He's a nice diplomatic guy, all the rest.
No,
he's not even an activist. But I mean, to my friend and Vice President, J.D. Vance, there needs to be a condemnation from the State Department in his office for the United Kingdom blocking Hassan Piker and Cenk Uygur, neither of whom I'm a personal fan of, from going to, these are U.S. citizens, being allowed visa access to the UK to participate in debate and discussions based on their speech. This is censorship that the Vice President condemned Europe for in his early speech in 2025. We need to be consistent. Otherwise, we look like hypocrites. Censorship's a problem, unless we like the censorship.
The problem with Hassan Piker, and
he's a total prick and probably a dog abuser and many other horrible and horrendous things. The problem is, it's clear the reason they did it was because of his Israel position.
Well, but he has
when they blocked Cenk too from going to Oxford.
Well, that's the thing. Cenk, he said some dumb things. I don't think they've been like promoting of violence, but Hassan, I would. The problem is you don't want to get into one of those situations where you're going to actually fight for someone who actively promotes violence against you. It's more of a gray zone when it comes to Hassan. He said some things which if I'm a foreign nation, I might not want this guy coming into my country and spewing vitriol that might lead to violence or promoting violence or whatever. Cenk, I've heard him say dumb things, but never things that really incite violence.
But
it was
at the invitation of Oxford University, England's great prestigious school. So it's like, well, you're slapping, you're saying your own universities can't sponsor debates with people whose views you don't like. And it's like, and the Trump administration needs to be consistent. It can't celebrate censorship and condemn it at the same time. It's got to be one or the other. I'm very disappointed in the Civil Rights Division. Almost nothing's happening on any of the lawfare cases. Almost nothing's happening on the vaccine mandate discrimination cases. Almost nothing's happening on the election integrity cases. Instead, Harmeet's every other tweet, every other public appearance is how she's doing great work for the nation of Israel. Last I checked, it's the Department of Justice of the United States of America, not the Department of Justice of the nation of Israel. But somebody needs to tell Harmeet that.
I got to pull this up, Robert, in real time. I'm just like following people's reactions now, and it's hilarious. What you do, people, you see, I don't know of every tweet by Han Shahnedy. I know I've seen his handle before. He tweets out, Trump capitulated, Iran won. Utter humiliation. I thought that
these are all these true MAGA. Look at how quickly they turn on Trump when he's not willing to push the war.
He put out a tweet, what is it, February, March, 5.5 months ago. When it comes to Iran, who do you trust more? The greatest foreign policy president in at least a half century, Donald Trump, or the Iraq war cheerleader, COVID panicking, and Qatari propagandist Tucker Carlson? Oh, but now he no longer trusts. Now he no longer trusts them. Hypocrites and morons with no memory.
That's why you don't get into bed with a scorpion. You don't give him if you're the frog, you don't give him a ride across the river. Because that's who they are. They will all betray Trump. He betrayed his own base and some of his core supporters for people that will betray him in a second. It's like leaving your loyal wife for the stripper that you met at the club. It's not going to end well. It never does.
Robert, let me before we go into we're done with Iran, so I'll bring up some.
Oh yeah, we've got self-defense. We've got SCOTUS. Carmelo
Robert.
Anthony. We got Trump.
Yeah.
UFC. We got Murdoch. Murdoch's gonna get a new trial. We got Sam Bankman-Fried and California's very unique election rules.
Well, I was going to say, if people aren't pissed off yet, let's get into Carmelo Anthony's trial in a second. When people want to make up garbage against you, Robert, there's no shortage of paths they won't take, but let's give them the one they want. Bill Dozer says, Levin is an evil little... I'm reading a Rumble rant, people. This is not my opinion. I don't know if he's evil.
He does look a little bit like a goblin. I got to admit that. Yeah.
He's probably still taller than me. Hold on one second. How tall is Mark Levin? I guarantee you he's taller than me. He's 6 feet tall? Holy crab apples. Okay, I don't believe that.
He's just really round, so a little bit of a barrel shape. Makes him look smaller than you think.
Bill Dozer says he's a little goblin, pleasures himself at the thought of forever wars in the sandbox.
That's probably true, sadly.
Gabby Iglesias says, Viva, ask your wife what she thinks about Trump brain, since he knows more than Barnes. I think Barnes
is that with her? Does she do that kind of analysis?
No, I don't know.
That's not her neurology study.
No, she's
like mostly help kids develop their brain, that kind of thing.
She maps out brain movements, but mostly as relates to eye movements and neuron development. But I tell everybody, I don't agree, Robert. I don't agree with your medical assessment, but I do agree that he's clearly being influenced by other considerations above and beyond what he campaigned on.
Voters wanted, yeah, exactly.
Randy Edwards says, hot tip, 92% of computer issues are connection issues. That said, call me Pollyanna, but peace in the Middle East in my lifetime would be a good thing. Yeah, it'd be great.
Oh, John Quincy Adams, one of his, all right, that's cool. So we might be, 10th degree cousins in one way, shape, or form.
CK Dolores 123 says, I loved Trita since I first heard him. Actually started to worry they do shit like that. Viva, too, if they don't like his criticism.
I know. That's probably who a little bit of shot across the bow is. Who else out there has a green card that they might try to target?
Today you tell me this bullshit, can't take it anymore. We will obviously defend. You can more vocally defend those who are more clearly innocent. The guy there, Mahmoud Khalil, walked a line. There was a gray zone.
Yeah, he was much more. But
the op-ed lady did not walk a line, as far as anyone could tell.
And they grabbed her off the street too, which was way over the top.
King of Biltong says, fuel your day with Biltong USA. Dried sausages, clean ingredients, and serious protein. Perfect for road trips, work, for braai time. What's braai time? Anywhere, anytime. BiltongUSA.com. Use code Barnes for 10% off. And stay tuned.
That's really good. It's like beef jerky. It's
amazing.
Good.
And I think we're gonna be working with Biltong to have our long-lasting line of hot sauces and chutney.
Oh, sweet! That's a good idea.
I don't know why it didn't occur to me earlier. We've got our bottles for the event, Robert, in August. Those are not through Biltong, but I think for the future, Biltong and I are going to work it out. Robert, Carmelo Anthony was convicted, and many people.
Yeah, shock. That was the most obvious conviction coming. Which makes me even more annoyed at the prosecutor.
So now people who are idiots or people who are obtuse or trolls want to misrepresent it and say, as if you were saying you thought Carmelo was innocent, or, hey, Robert, why don't you just go down and defend him, given the shit I took last week from what you said during the show. All that to say, your issues, I would say some of them I think might have been misapprehension of some of the facts of the case, which have now been more thoroughly fleshed out. Others were righteous legal criticisms that were in fact even, I say, ratified, confirmed, agreed upon by Andrew Branca. The only question that he had with respect to your tweet that said, they rushed the jury selection, they rushed opening arguments, and they're asking questions of fact, questions of expert opinion to witnesses of fact. Branca said, look, I agree on all of these. The only question is whether or not these are reversible errors. Yeah, and then the question about...
That's like, why even do it? This was an opening. The prosecutor had to have known what the defense did not have a defense. The few witnesses that were going to testify for them had already moderated their... Now, I didn't like the fact that some of these witnesses had one opinion, one version of events at the time when they talked to police, and then by time of trial, they have a different opinion that aligns with the prosecution. That always makes me a little worried that you have a community that reacted so strongly to this murder that it put pressure on people to selectively remember what happened different than what they told the cops at the time. So with that point being put aside, you knew as a prosecutor this was the case. So it means you had an open and shut case, because the reason why it was so open and shut was there was no evidence. The prosecutor knew there had been no evidence that the Karmelo Anthony faced a risk of death unless he used the knife. There was just no evidence for that.
I mean, or even grievous bodily harm. You don't have to wait for death. Right. There was no evidence. There was
even I think serious. I don't think under Texas. I thought it had to be deadly. It has to be some kind of injury you think will cause you death, not even serious hurt. I think if I remember that right, but double check that.
While you talk.
If before you can use deadly force, which meant his only defense would be that he didn't use deadly force, and it was in response to being physically pushed. The problem was the way in which he used the knife. It would be very hard to plausibly claim he didn't think that was deadly force, because he basically stabbed him right in the chest. And so given that, I was like, look, what you should do, I think you should do this universally, because I believe in constitutionally fair trials. I don't believe in lynching juries even for the most guilty of guilty. Maybe I'd carve out an exception for Bill Gates, but it depends on the circumstance.
And Fauci.
Maybe Fauci too. Yeah, maybe Fauci too. But no, I believe in the Constitution. We believe in this process for adjudication for two reasons. We think it's the best way to assure only the guilty are convicted, but also to gain public confidence in the outcome. And part of that is to have an impartial jury. The prosecutor and the judge act to make sure the trial is fair. The defense lawyer acts as the advocate. That's how our legal system is supposed to operate. Sadly, it is long since not. Judges are cheering for one side. Prosecutors think their duty is to win, not to get justice done, not to get the public confidence, not to make sure it's a constitutionally held trial. So, and what happens after the verdict? You had a range of people in the African-American community say this was not a fair trial. They rigged it because they excluded all the blacks from the jury, and because they were intimidating witnesses into favorable answers against him. So he had no defense, and they created a defense for him in the court of public opinion by what they did, because they were scared of even the 2% chance of acquittals. And all you have to do is receive any of the responses in my X feed. Half of them are about race. They're like, no, black people can't be jurors, this, that, all that kind of stuff.
Well, so let me break
racism is coming from the anti-Anthony people, not just, there's plenty of racism from the pro-Anthony people, but there's plenty of racism from the anti-Anthony people too. And it's like, that's all the more reason to make sure, how easy it would have been to say 3 black mothers, school teachers, convicted him. That would shut down 95% of the criticism. Now they can't. And I get Brianna Morello and other people you had on last week saying, look, there are Asian jurors, there are Hispanic jurors, there are Muslim jurors. From a black American perspective, no blacks on the jury is no different than an all-white jury. That's for them how they see it. They do not see Asian jurors as their equal. They do not see Muslim jurors as their equal. They don't see Hispanic jurors as their equal. There's a long history of hostility and animosity between those communities. So it was critical. He had the opportunity to have 3 black school teachers on there. Anybody who knows anything about school teachers will know they'll be eager to convict a kid who brought a weapon to school. Regardless of the racial dynamics, black jurors convict more black defendants than almost any group in America on a daily basis in this country. The belief they could not be fair, could not be impartial, is based in prejudice, not rationality. And those black jurors who admitted they couldn't be impartial were removed from the jury pool for cause correctly. But these jurors did not have any cause to be removed. Their removal was a violation of the constitutional rights of really all Americans in an impartial jury, but technically it's the defendant who has the standing to raise it. And now, will the Texas Criminal Court of Appeals or Texas Supreme Court care? Very unlikely. But could the U.S. Supreme Court reverse this in the future? Maybe about a 5%, 10% chance. But in the court of public opinion, they permanently scarred this case by making it look like it was a racially rigged case due to the win-at-all-cost mindset of the prosecutor.
2 things to highlight, because people are going to jump down your throat about this. It's a very legitimate point. It's almost a little politically incorrect to say that having Asians and Muslims on a jury does not make that a minority relevant to rebutting the argument that he's a black defendant, because, I mean, look, the tensions between the Asian and black community in New York in particular, when you had Asian Lives Matter and the vast majority of people knocking them in the head happened, they were of the black community. You're not going to get someone to believe the argument an Asian is going to be like more amenable to hearing a bogus defense in the first place. So, it was not an all-white jury, but like you rightly say, from the defendant or from the race baiting argument perspective, it was the equivalent of, because an Asian on a jury is not exactly the angle of the minority that they wanted. Set that aside. People were giving you crap last week for suggesting that they were excluded for cause because they said they couldn't be biased or they couldn't be unbiased. The three who were educators were school teachers. Right? They were school teachers. They were struck because the explanation was, given their professions, that they,
do you buy that? I mean, I'll tell you right now, I don't buy it at all. I can tell you, prosecutors generally love school teachers on juries. They're natural authoritarians. Defense lawyers generally despise school teachers on juries because of their natural authoritarians. They kind of lucked out that here's what a pretext is. You try to find something that ties the jurors in common, that distinguishes them from the non-black juries, that can sound plausible, but all you have to do is scratch beneath the surface. Nobody put it this way, the judge should have required, if you wanted a constitutional jury selection, tell me which categories of profession, occupation, or life experience in advance that you think are problematic. Not, oh, look, we got the black jurors, what's in common with them, but not in common? Oh, they're school teachers. Prosecutors love school teachers. Does anybody doubt? Just look at the replies on my expos. Nobody really makes a credible argument that the school teacher status is why. They all say, no, Barnes, no black juror could be impartial. That's what they go right there. That's what's constitutionally impermissible.
And by the way, to comments like this, the defense approved the jury, same as prosecution.
No, they didn't.
They filed a Batson challenge.
What's amazing is there's myths now on both sides. The myth on the Anthony side is going to be that he was surrounded by a bunch of white kids when he was sitting in a tent, not minding his own manners. They were threatening him. They were going to gang beat him. They were 60, 80, 100 pounds bigger than him. So he tries to defend himself just to get out. One of them dies and they blame him and won't give him self-defense in a rigged trial by the prosecutor, leading the witnesses, intimidating the witnesses, and having a no black jury, which to the black community is all white. And about half of that is true and half of it is garbage. On the anti-Anthony side, it's going to be, no, all the black jurors excused themselves. Oh, the defense agreed to all of these jury. They approved it all the way through. It was actually a very diverse jury pool, ignoring the lack of black presence. So you're seeing myths develop on both sides about this case. And half of them will be true, half of them will be utterly false. But a year from now, you won't even be able to persuade somebody else because they will be so locked into their mythological version of what took place. And it shows you how these people operate in separate media spaces where their biases are reinforced, and they choose to believe things that are provably false within about 30 seconds of research. But they don't choose not to do it because they want to believe those things on both sides. My view was Karmelo Anthony was guilty of at least manslaughter, if not murder, unless he presented. I gave him the opportunity. Maybe he had a defense. He could explain. He never took the stand. I think that was a mistake of his lawyer. His lawyer advised him not to take the stand. They had no defense. At that point, they had to put him on.
Well,
and the kid would cry on a dime. The kid would cry on anything.
You just turned into a robot again. You might have to back yourself out and come back in.
Okay.
While he does that, I'll just confirm everybody. What I brought up, if you're watching on podcast, there were Batson challenges brought for the 3 black jurors that were struck, and which means that they didn't agree to it for whatever it's worth. And I would think an educator, you would want an educator on the jury, because the last thing a teacher wants is the new standard being, you get to stab someone in the heart if they shove you at a track meet. So
you get to go where you want. You get to bring a knife to a school. These are things, and the other thing is the black community will eagerly, and they do this every day all across America. I believe that they're usually the most fair jurors because there are certain circumstances where they're not, but generally speaking, because they have been the most common victims of crime, along with being the most common victims of justice system abuse, or know somebody who has been, they tend to be truly impartial. They'll be skeptical of the prosecution and skeptical of the defense. And he presented no defense, really, at trial, none.
Oh, yeah. He didn't take the stand. There was no defense, period. So, bottom line, convicted 35.
Reportedly said something different to the cops at the time. They were apparently planning on these, but they had to have known these witnesses wouldn't stick with it because the witnesses are associated with the friend's family, with the victim's family. And so that made it very unlikely. But again, they didn't need to rig the trial, which made it twice as bad. I'm against rigging any trial against the Constitution, but I'm particularly find it when it's tactically stupid, when you didn't need to do it, when you could have had complete confidence of 95% of the people in the verdict. You got confidence of about 75% right now. But why not get 95%? My view is if I was a prosecutor, I would not exercise peremptory strikes. I've had some ethical prosecutors who agree with me. Say, yes, you, the defense. Our job is just to make sure there's nobody for cause, but we're not going to move to strike anybody peremptory. That's you in the defense because we don't want there to be any second guessing about we want a pro-defense juror because we're really right. We'll get them convicted anyway. And it's a check on our own error-prone capabilities as human beings. But that isn't what happens. And because this case was so polarized from the get-go, you couldn't get an honest debate on this case, no matter what you did. You were going to be hated by one side or the other.
All right, I think the robo voice was a word from the higher order to move on from this one. It was a 35 years, eligible for parole at 17 and a half. I don't think the sentence was long enough. And I've been doing the rounds on. I was on with Sunny Johnson yesterday on her radio show on Sirius XM. I had on Maj Touré, who was a very reasonable, sensible voice in long format. And I went on with Hotep Jesus, as my grandmother says now, the second time, first and the last. I've never heard the term clip farming, but it became clear that what that abusive discussion was intended to do was to get me to say something racist, something bad, something that could be clipped for clickbaiting. And when they didn't have that, they put out tweets calling me a liar when in the interview I got nothing less than Hotep Jesus, and now I'm almost reluctant to say the name anymore, to confirm basically he's ratifying this type of behavior because, FAFO. There's a FAFO mentality in his community, so he says, and I don't think he speaks for that community. But with that said, Robert, okay, good. Moving on. I wanted we could have done just a touch briefly on the Tulsi Gabbard biolabs in Ukraine.
Oh yeah, that came out this weekend.
Yeah, because that was more fitting with the Iran, but I was just say something, Robert.
Check.
Yeah, you went robot again. Okay, come on. We're gonna do this all night. What I would say is, so Tulsi Gabbard comes out and confirms, I guess, what we all knew. But the amazing thing is, in confirming it, now the people who say she's come out and confirmed something that I don't believe have to go back to it being Russian propaganda, that Tulsi Gabbard, as Trump's pick for the ODNI, is now spewing Russian propaganda of bioweapons labs, gain-of-function research labs in Ukraine and elsewhere. Robert, her 3-minute video, and she put out a statement. It was almost self-servingly exonerating of this administration. I don't think this administration is engaging in it. The only question is whether or not they know of it and are carrying on with certain facilities in certain parts of the world doing no things, or they're going to crack down on it. She comes out and says there are biolab research facilities doing gain-of-function research in Ukraine, abroad in the world, and on her way out, she sort of drops that proverbial political bomb. People come out and the jackasses, I have to respond to them like, she's doing Putin's legwork again and yada, yada. I don't understand how people can be so dense and obtuse. This was Trump's pick. She got approval. She's one of the most trustworthy voices there. Comes out and says something that they don't like, and then all of a sudden they no longer trust Trump's picks anymore. What's the new evidence that she has to the extent that it's been divulged? And what do you make of basically her confirming what we all already knew when Victoria Nuland confirmed it in response to a question from Marco Rubio?
Yeah, she wasn't supposed to confirm that to Marco Rubio, but she did. It's basically, so the research on bioweapons became controversial after World War II. And ultimately, by the early 1980s, we signed treaties prohibiting the development of biological weapons. So what Tulsi Gabbard disclosed over the weekend is a report that she was working on that she had wanted to have until the end of the year to finish, formalize, and finalize, but she was pushed out earlier than that. And so she decided that she wasn't going to let that research go to waste. And she would do everything she could in the last month she held office to get out the information about the biolabs, how it's connected to COVID in Ukraine, and a further report on both COVID and on the 2020 election. She's going to try to get the other two done before the month is out, given that she is now on the clock. And so the credit to her for having the courage to go forward with this, to go through with it, to expedite the information contained within it. And what it discloses is that the U.S., along with other foreign nations around the world, have been in continuous systemic violation of our own past bioweapons treaties. That all of these various labs that we have are supposed to be biodefense labs, solely designed for defense against potential bioweapons or things that might accidentally become, in other words, something that wasn't even originally intended to, but becomes a bioweapon. Instead, we've been researching, it always never made any sense. We're going to research this new bioweapon because
that we're developing.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe somebody else at the same time is magically developing in order to have a defense against it. It was always garbage. But this blew up in the early 2010s. Obama promised no more of this. And what Fauci did is he went under the radar and started funding it in foreign countries and funding it with grants disguised as something else. And it was huge in Ukraine. It looks like over 30 biolabs just in Ukraine. When Russia originally outed this fact, the US media said it was Russian-made conspiracy theories, even though anybody who knew the history of Ukraine and the history of bioweapons research would not be surprised at that at all. Ukraine was our experimental grounds for human trafficking, for money laundering, for a wide range, for regime change coups, for trying to stab at the underbelly of Russia from that long frontier that Ukraine has and has long been the concern of Russia. You know, everybody from the Turks to the Poles have used it at one time or another, along with the Germans, to try to get access to the heart of Russia. But the other nasty part was the human trafficking, the money laundering, the criminal gang activities, the arms trafficking, arms running, and all the rest. And so she comes out and details that America has been in breach of our treaty obligations developing bioweapons around the world. And what you'll find is ties to COVID, ties to China, ties to Ukraine, ties to Bill Gates, ties to Dr. Fauci, and a range of people involved in systemic criminal violations of the law. And you have to also wonder whether weapons go with that. That too has been banned since 1977. Have we been doing that? There's hints and rumors and ruminations of it about what happened in the Gulf and with Iran, where we're manipulating the weather environment there to induce a drought in Iran after certain highly sensitive radars and other devices were taken out of the Gulf. All of a sudden they get plenty of rain. So you can make your own judgment, but there are those that are speculating that this involves some form of geo-weaponization, geoengineering. But with credit to her, she's documented in detail one of the great scandals of American intelligence and national security tied in foreign governments and prominent NGOs and public officials. And the only question is whether anybody ever does anything about it. But credit to Tulsi Gabbard for delivering on this critical report that is exposing more of our dirty secrets of our deep state. And her hope is that it builds an indictment of the deep state over time.
Let me bring this one up. I mean, I know we've played it many times, but just
watching Marco's face is great. No, you're supposed to say no. You're supposed to say no. What are you doing, Victoria?
Here, watch this.
I only have a minute left. Let me ask you, does Ukraine have chemical or biological weapons?
Ukraine has biological research facilities, which, in fact, we are now quite concerned Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of. So we are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach.
I'm sure you're aware that the Russian propaganda groups are already putting out there all kinds of information about how they've uncovered a plot by the Ukrainians to release biological weapons in the country and with NATO's coordination. If there's a biological or chemical weapon incident or attack inside of Ukraine, is there any doubt in your mind that 100% it would be the Russians that would be behind it?
There is no doubt in my mind, Senator, and it is classic Russian technique to blame on the other guy what they're planning to do themselves.
It's
confession through projection by her. Everything they accuse Russia of is what Victoria Nuland and Marco Rubio were doing.
It's just stunning the way she thinks, the way she says it is like intellectualizing exactly what she's admitting to. There are bio-research facilities, and they have that nasally.
Facilities. The question was weapons, and she's like, well, they're research facilities.
But now we're nervous that the Russians might get them, so let's go fight Russia.
What's in those research facilities that you're worried about Russia getting their hands on? And of course, it was, as disclosed by Tulsi Gabbard, known by Victoria Nuland at the time, known by Narco Marco at the time, who is suborning perjury in his role as United States Senator before he was Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, where he's continued his campaign of deception. Publicly and privately, pretends he's for the war, then against the war, then for the war, then against the war, because his favorite thing to do is to dress up and dance, you might say, literally and figuratively. But credit to Tulsi Gabbard for delivering. They were able to push her out, but she was able to give herself a month's time to get this intel and information out to the American people that hopefully we can do something about in due time.
All right, that's good. That's the Tulsi Gabbard. What do we move on to now?
We got a lot. We got SCOTUS. We got self-defense. We got the Murdaugh murder. We got Trump UFC. We got the SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried appeal, and the elections and laws in California.
Well, let's. Some of those I'm going to be not entirely up to speed on. The UFC has been allowed to proceed, but I keep refreshing to see if it has started. So my first pick was Diego Lopez. He has not yet fought. Bo Nickel, Mauricio Rufy, Josh Hokett. I'm picking Ayman Zahabi. He's Faraz Zahabi's brother, I think, out of Montreal. He's amazing. Alex Pereira, Ilia Topuria are my picks. Refreshing to see if the fight has started, but I'm not sure that it has because I don't yet see my first pick winning. But Robert, it was last week that there was an emergency injunction filed on Saturday. So I just got a note. It says, respond to Siri by moving your head when wearing AirPods. What the heck is this? Someone's spying on me, Robert. I'm joking. I don't know what the hell. I got a notification from Siri for some reason. There was
BB saying hello.
I'm going to keep my hands down. And last Saturday, an emergency injunction was filed to prevent enjoin the UFC event, which is being held tonight, on the basis that misrepresentations as to whether or not it was going to be using public funds. It didn't get authorization from Congress before, doing some changes to the White House lawn. And I did say, there's zero chance this injunction gets through because if only for latches, they've known, maybe they didn't know about all of the legalities as to the financing, whatever, but they've known about this event since October. They've been building it for the last month and a half. And so this activist group that wanted to enjoin the event got shut down. The event is going to be held now. Where you raised some legitimate points. I just said it's too little and way too late because if you disagreed with the funding and the financing, whatever, go take it up after the event. But right now you've waited until the eve of the event, knowing full well it's going to go on. Struck down. Do they get to continue a claim? They got struck down for not having standing and latches and basically everything under the sun. But do you foresee any longer term potentially legitimate lawsuits for, I don't know, that this should have been an event open to the public, not using taxpayer dollars, and it should not have been a corporate affair?
I think the remedy will be more potentially investigations, impeachment, things like that. But given the court's interpretation of the standing, it doesn't look like the suit itself will go forward in any meaningful form. And because they were seeking declaratory and injunctive relief, not any other form of relief, without getting that, it kind of moots the case. That was your prediction. Your prediction was that the lateness of the suit would, in one way, shape, or form, motivate the judge to deny the relief on the eve of the event, and that is, in fact, what occurred. So you got it.
Score one for the Canadian Chinook. Everybody freaking out about the White House dirt bike stunts on the front lawn. I mean, they're a bunch of joyless, humorless idiots. I do appreciate the criticism. It was oh geez, Luis Drew Hernandez put out this criticism, as did you, that to the extent you're doing it, it should be open to the public. Live stream it.
Make it available. Maybe, celebrate as Americana. Have Sean Strickland there. Now, rumor was he was going to go anyway. That he was going to get tickets. Somehow he's going to sneak his way in.
Apparently, he got an invite.
That'd be funny.
I'm going to keep following it. But the bottom, it could. I don't know what the contractual restrictions might have been. It would have been awesome to have this streamed on Rumble and get Rumble. I like Power Slap is fun. UFC is awesome, but other than that criticism, it's Americans. First of all, I'm American at heart, American spirit. We love dangerous sports. You love stunts. Everything about it. People are saying it looks like Idiocracy. I understand people saying that. What looks more like Idiocracy to me is a transgender person flashing fake boobs on the White House lawn with the 2S LGBTQIA+ flag in the middle of the American flag hanging from the White House. Dudes doing butt sex in Senate hearing rooms. That is Idiocracy. People who can't tell the difference between a boy and a girl and think boys can be girls if they say they are. That's Idiocracy. Not awesome stunts and dirt bikes and actual feats of human accomplishment. So that's my rant on that. We're going to keep following to see when this event gets started. Okay, so that was the UFC. Easy going one. SCOTUS. What's coming out of SCOTUS? Because they haven't issued their rulings on the 26 outstanding issues, birthright citizenship, Title IX. I mean, we know what they've got left here, but what did they come out with this week?
Quartet of decisions. One was just denial of emergency relief. So 3 major decisions. But all the big ones, really, still, they're really waiting for them for the very end. So we had a venue decision, a when can you sue as a private actor for a federal law violation, the private right of action, implied cause of action theory. When do you have equitable jurisdiction of judicial estoppel if you don't disclose something in a bankruptcy petition? So it was that trio of cases plus an 8th Amendment cruel and unusual punishment for Alabama death penalty.
Yeah, so let's start with this one. This is an Alabama death penalty case. It was a man who killed a pawn shop owner and an employee in a botched robbery, gets convicted. The jury didn't sentence him to death, but the judge overrode it and sentenced him to death. Sentenced him to death by nitrogen inhalation?
It's called, nitrogen hypoxia.
Yeah, so hypoxia means like deprivation of oxygen, which is... So here's here's a trivia question for everybody out there. What is the cause of death for everybody on Earth? It's the same cause of death for everybody. Lack of oxygen to the brain. Your heart can come out, but if they can keep oxygenating your brain, you're good. The second, and if you have cancer, what ends up killing you is lack of oxygen to the brain. So nitrogen hypoxia, they basically cause you to breathe that which is not oxygen, and you don't get oxygen to your brain, and you die. And I wasn't sure if it's not laughing gas, although if you inhale strictly laughing gas for too long, you also will die. But they sentenced this guy to death through nitrous hypoxia. You just put a mask on, and I don't know if it feels like going under general anesthetics or if there is actual known...
It's the last minute of it that's caused the controversy. So apparently you get this panic, horrible reaction in your brain. In other words, what they're trying to do to avoid cruel and unusual punishment under the 8th Amendment is avoid anything that feels like or looks like torture. And so they've been trying to restructure the death penalty to be done in such a way that it creates minimal physical harm that could look like something that could be equivalent to torture. And the issue with the nitrous, the issue that came up in the court system with this mechanism was apparently in the last minute, it causes this like extreme panic, extreme psychological reaction, rather than just calmly, slowly passing away. There was some factual controversy about that, but the Supreme Court was satisfied that there was enough of a claim that maybe this was the case, that they did not reverse the 11th Circuit's injunction on using this mechanism of the death penalty as cruel and unusual punishment until there's more of a factual record developed about this. And in general, the Supreme Court tends to not overturn stays in death penalty cases, because you can understand why. If it turns out the defendant was right and you should have stayed it, well, there's truly no reversing it. if you fail to stand.
I don't even know if people on Rumble, CommieTube, are saying firing squad as a joke. That's literally what they suggested as the alternative. They said Alabama's got the firing squad. How that's not as torturous a death.
The theory is that basically you get hiccup, you're dead much quicker than is the case with this. It's this last minute or two of whether it's used in. The theory was, when they originally pushed this out there in Alabama, was that it would just be like going to sleep. And apparently there's disputes amongst doctors as whether the last minute is like going to sleep, or is it more like torturing you for a minute.
That's interesting.
So that's where the dispute. It's really a scientific dispute, because the law is determined. You can't do anything that's like torture, but for a certain length of time, unless it's necessarily incidental to the only method of execution. I remember somebody describing to me years ago that they thought the only ethical way to do the death penalty was to let somebody think they said let somebody think they're going to go free and come from behind their head and shoot them twice in the head so they never know it happened. That, like the ending of
Lenny of Mice and Men,
or the ending of that's implied in
Sopranos.
Sopranos, yeah, right. Like that's the loose idea of that.
No, but the idea
it's also because American courts go back and forth on the death penalty. There's one moment they have no problem with it, and there's another moment that they do. It's how much does it feel like people are getting glee in delivering unnecessary pain for the purposes of execution. And I think, there's some people that say, hey, the pain should be part of the punishment. So I get that argument. But constitutionally, that's not a currently acceptable argument with the court.
No, or the psychological pain of knowing that you're going to go.
Yeah. That's what a lot of people that do death penalty cases say is much worse. It's the law, it's all that.
And my position on the death penalty is not going to change in theory versus in practice. But and I'm just looking up.
You have to have confidence that our legal system isn't frying innocent people.
Yeah, well, in a couple of cases,
I don't find the theory problematic at all. In principle, execution. I don't trust the people doing it. It's the short answer.
Well, no,
I don't trust the politicians, the judges, the prosecutors, or God bless them, even the jurors. Even though the jurors in this case did not want a death penalty, which was interesting. The judge overrode it.
You take the FedEx driver case who kidnaps the little girl and kill. That's fine. That would be that's the where he admits it, blames it on a voice in his head. Yeah. That's not good enough. But I did look it up because if you do too much laughing gas, you do die from nitrogen hypoxia. I imagine dying is not a good feeling. Is when the last minute when your brain is deprived.
I don't understand why you couldn't put them under and then they're dead.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Like general anesthetics, and then what they do to dogs.
That's what I thought. But somehow the way they're doing this causes. Well, maybe the doctors are wrong. But the evidence the court cited was this minute of torture feeling. It's like, okay.
So anyway, so he got remanded for the method of the death penalty, correct?
Correct.
There's no, okay. The other one that came out of the Supreme Court, what was the one that
we got a venue case, an equity case, and an ICA right to sue case.
What's the
one?
A
trilogy and then
the bankruptcy case where the woman filed, a husband and wife filed for bankruptcy. They have a trustee administering their affairs. They got to pay back their debts over the next 5 years with zero interest. The woman, I think it's a year or two later, gets into a car accident. Fairly certain it's in another state. She files a claim for negligence, presumably compensation, and doesn't notify the trustee that she filed suit. And what was the sanction that the trustee wanted to impose? It was
the defendant.
It was the defendant who says, you don't get to sue us because you failed to notify your trustee. And I don't know what, I mean, first of all, if she did it to defraud the trustee by claiming it, if that's what she was trying to do, that's one hell of the stupidest thing on earth, because they have control, or at least they're administering your affairs, your finances. They're going to see money coming in unless you think you're going to ask for a cash settlement. I don't know how you think you get away with it if that was the intention. But ultimately, the defendant sought the dismissal of her suit because she didn't notify the trustee, ultimately succeeded. I don't know if it was first and second levels, but the Supreme Court comes in and says that the reasonable error, she claimed, I didn't do it on purpose, and then I notified my trustee as soon as I was told to do so. And ultimately they said, too bad, too little, too late, you lose your suit. And then the Supreme Court comes in and says, no, you have to look at the totality of the circumstances to determine whether or not it was a bona fide error as opposed to a strict, narrow criteria.
Exactly. I mean, what was so weird about this was using bankruptcy proceedings for things that don't relate to the bankruptcy proceedings. So normally the reason why you withhold information from a bankruptcy court is you don't want those creditors to get access to those funds. Here, the creditors had 100% repayment, so they had no concerns whatsoever about, they would not have been tapping these funds anyway, and they voiced no complaint. It was the defendant who was guilty of negligence in causing an accident that wanted a free exit out solely because of the oversight of not filing this additional provision, because this happened after the original deal was done, but while the bankruptcy was ongoing with the payment plan. And so that's why the judges were like, this isn't what the bankruptcy laws were intended for. But what the Supreme Court also got really right is there's been an abuse of power concerning judicial estoppel. They try to say some other case in some other context litigated fairly your claim so that they can preclude and prevent you from asserting your argument or your defense or your right to remedy or relief in another court or another case. And it's a misapplication of judicial estoppel and equitable principles, which are supposed to be case by case, fact specific, not supposed to have hard and fast rules, it's not rules of law. It's by definition rules of equity, which go back to appealing to the conscience of the king. That is saying, hey, king, in this context, applying the law strictly is unfair. And you as in your conscience, you have to override it. So that's what all principles of equity stem from. That old exchequer king's conscience appeal. And once that's given the case, once you understand that historical analysis or context for these principles, seeing rigid rules be applied that make it automatic, which is what the 11th Circuit, or no, in this case, the 5th Circuit was doing, because it was out of Mississippi, was a direct affront to the principles of equitable jurisdiction and equitable law and their entire origin and what policies policies are why we have equitable law. So credit to the Supreme Court. It was like, this makes no sense. And I think it was a unanimous decision, reversed the 5th Circuit.
Yeah, they all had, there was some, they said dissenting, they had different
They had some concurring opinions.
Yeah.
They all agreed with the conclusion.
No, it's actually, the point that I didn't fully appreciate is that it didn't even violate the agreement that was already in place, which was to pay them back over 5 years regardless. Maybe they could have argued we could get paid back faster, but they already had their agreement. But I also don't believe that this person did it on purpose, because they've got supervision of your bank finances. There's no way to settle on that lawsuit without having the trustee know. All right, then the other one, which was the right
to a venue case and a right to sue case.
Which one was the one of the grocery store owner that shot the?
That's our separate South Carolina self-defense case.
Okay, fine.
It goes with our South Carolina is Murtaugh the murderer case.
Okay, so skip that. We'll put that one back on the side. The two remaining ones from SCOTUS, field those.
Okay, yeah. So there's various laws passed by Congress. In this case, it's the ICA concerning investment. And in a lot of these laws, like for example, the restriction on disabilities, discriminating on disabilities or religious grounds by airplanes. A lot of these laws have no enforcement mechanism other than some regulatory agency taking action. And the question is, can an individual sue if the regulatory agency is not enforcing the law? And that's when they have what's called an implied cause of action. When they say if the law talks about individual rights, then we might imply that you have a right to bring a claim in federal court to enforce it. But that otherwise, we will usually presume and assume that the Congress only intended the executive branch to enforce these particular legal provisions and not private individuals. And there was another example where they made that determination. They're moving more and more away from allowing people to sue in court to enforce federal law. The three liberals dissented, and I lean towards their dissent in how this is being handled. But it's where the conservatives have aligned. They want to eliminate as many rights to sue in federal court as possible. Sometimes for good reasons, policy-wise, sometimes for bad reasons, policy-wise. But I don't think they're correctly construing the Constitution or the statutes when they're making these decisions in the first instance.
All right.
And the other one is the criminal venue, which has been a bugaboo of mine for a long time.
I know this one, but I'm blanking right now.
This was the guy that they were investigating for whether or not he was using Twitter to help the Saudi government.
Yeah, what was his name? Abu Amas or something. He was alleged of. Oh no, you're gonna have to field it. I'm gonna forget. He was alleged to have been assisting which country? I want to say Syria.
Saudi
The
Arabia.
Saudis. And so he went. They accused him of either being paid to message in favor of the Saudis. He had received monies.
He was discovering various locations and names of dissidents using the Twitter backdoor information of identification of various accounts that might be anonymous accounts, and helping the Saudis roadmap out who their opponents are on Twitter. And this was a scandal for a little while because remember, the Saudis are a part investor. It was in that Twitter at that time. This was pre-Elon Musk taking it over. The problem was it wasn't clear he committed any crimes. So the mistake he made is whenever the feds don't have a clear crime, they try to entrap you into obstructing the investigation, lying to them, so that then the crime charged is not the underlying conduct, which was never criminal at all, but rather is your attempt to cover up what wasn't even criminal at all. Now the thing is, when he originally does this, he's working in San Francisco. So the FBI office is the San Francisco office investigating. But he had then moved to Seattle and started a new business using the $300,000 the Saudis gave him, the seed capital. Feds came knocking on his door, and he should have said, "Talk to my lawyer, shut the door." But he doesn't. He lets him in, and they're like, "Didn't you get paid money?" First, he tries to deny that he got paid anything. He was like, "Oh well, yeah, they did pay something for some work that I did." They're like, "Well, do you have an invoice?" They knew he didn't have an invoice, so this was purely an entrapment plot. Maybe doesn't reach the legal level of entrapment, but it's what they're up to. He goes up, of course, and makes one up. These idiots that think you can make up something right on the fly, it's just, they compound their stupidity. Because he didn't realize what he did wasn't really criminal underneath. He hadn't got, $300,000. Go get an opinion for $30,000. But he didn't. And so he falsifies, creates this fake invoice, gives it to him in Seattle. They then prosecute him for obstruction of justice in San Francisco. And his complaint is, I did this in Seattle. I filled out the invoice in Seattle. I gave it to them in Seattle. And under the Constitution, there's multiple provisions under the Constitution that require crimes to be prosecuted in the state and district and vicinage where, in fact, the crime occurred. I believe that we should expand and extend a right of defendants to be able to force a crime to be prosecuted in their home district. That's not normally a state issue, but it is normally a federal, in terms of federal law. But that's a separate issue for another day. So here he said, hey, under the Constitution, you can't try me in the Northern District of California because the crime wasn't committed here. The district court, the Ninth Circuit say, no, it's where you intend to have an effect by your actions. And you knew the investigation was being run out of San Francisco. So this intended effects theory of venue allows the Northern District of California to prosecute. The Supreme Court quite correctly said, no, that isn't the way venue has worked or has ever worked. It's where you act with intent, not where you plan on your intent impacting. So since his intent to falsify the document was in Seattle, since he falsified the document in Seattle, since he gave it to them in Seattle, only Seattle had venue. And so the case was thrown out, but it's a strong reinforcement of the principles of venue, which the Supreme Court has been slow to enforce now for a long time. Hopefully it keeps going in that direction of really restoring the right of venue and vicinage in the Constitution. That again is unique in that it is placed in multiple places within the Constitution to enforce it. That's how important it was considered. It was one of the worst crimes of the Brits that was identified in the Revolution was taking Americans back to England to be tried. They said, no, they should be tried right here. So venue was one of the most important principles of the founders, and it has been long ignored by the Supreme Court, and we're now starting to see it respected in ways it always should have been, and hopefully restore it to its rightful role as a centerpiece of our criminal justice system.
All right, and those are the 4 from SCOTUS that came out. These are obviously not politically charged decisions. They're holding off on the biggest ones.
Obviously.
You know, some people are going to say they're holding off so that they can create a summer of love when they release some of these ones that might piss some people off. We'll see. So that's it for SCOTUS for now. We're going to go to. Do we go to the one? Well, hold on. Before we do anything, actually, I noticed some new crumble rants have come in, and I got to check to see if the fight has started yet. I don't. They might be having serious weather issues. Eric 4x4 says, "Did you see the journalist Tara P mocking an indigenous person for representing their tribe at the UFC?" I messaged you the link on X. I think they're talking about Alex Pereira, who people are saying, "Oh, look what Trump, he's turned it into a circus because there's a guy dressed up like an Indian at the weigh-ins." I'm like, dude, that he's from. Where's he from? Oh, geez, where's Pereira from? It's his tribe from South America. I have to go get his country now. I tweeted out, like, you guys are idiots. This is his traditional indigenous garb that he's wearing. He's not dressing up in red face at a UFC weigh-in. This is his indigenous culture, history. What country is Alex Pereira from? I want to say Honduras. I'm going to look for the chat to tell me. Anyhow, bottom line, I think I saw it, Eric 4x4. I don't know if you sent that to me, but I did see it, and I've been calling out these idiot journalists for being idiots, but they're morons. Buckabrush Jones says, "We assassinated Igor Kirillov, who called out our Ukrainian biolabs years ago." Robert, is there a hush-hush in there? I don't know who Igor Kirillov is.
Vaguely familiar, but don't remember all the details.
And King of Biltong says, if Barnes goes robo voice again, he must say, "Luke, I am your father." We'll get that one for the next one. All right, so what happened? How'd you get so small there? Get back in here. Robert, so there was an interesting case. What state was this one out of? The grocery store claiming...
South Carolina. So it connects to the Murdoch case. We get 2 big South Carolina Supreme Court cases back to back.
This is a case that I've never heard of. I would have... It seems like another just people... It would be a case where Maj Touré's conflict de-escalation would have saved a person's life. So from what I understand of the facts of the case, a guy goes into a supermarket, pretends to shoplift something. What did he pretend to shoplift? Doesn't matter.
Something small. It was something really small.
Yeah, he pretended to shoplift something.
Like $1, something like that.
Yeah, the owner of the store didn't like it and decides to kick him out. I don't know if they trespassed him. He says, "Get out." A conflict ensues, and the nephew of the owner comes armed with it's a machete, something, and a gun.
First, it's a machete and then a gun.
And Robert, say something.
Can you see me?
Now say, "Luke, I'm your father." Hold on, wait.
Luke, I'm your father.
All right, now kick yourself out and come back in. So the guy goes and gets a machete, then he gets a gun, then he chases the guy out of the store. Or not chases up, he expels him from the store. The guy goes out and then decides to get smart and say, "No, I'm pissed off that I got kicked out of the store," comes back in, and there's an altercation subsequent to which, or as a result of which, he gets shot twice in the head and dies. And the question was whether or not the stand your ground self-defense castle doctrine applies to employees of an enterprise, which would also have the castle doctrine right to self-defense. And the ultimate answer is yes, it does.
Yeah, and then the question was, if you rule that way in a criminal case, does it apply to the civil subsequent case? Because typically, if you're indicted in a criminal case and you get acquitted or the case is dismissed, it depends on the evidentiary standard utilized. So this is why, Kyle Rittenhouse can't sue some people that you normally otherwise could, because once he was indicted, even though he was acquitted, the legal standard is that they have probable cause, and the conviction standard is beyond a reasonable doubt. And so because there's a gap between those two standards, you might believe something, you might have probable cause to believe something that a jury has found is not true beyond a reasonable doubt, but the jury's never negated the probable cause. So consequently, you have immunity from libel and other things. So the question was, when in a criminal defense context can you take your self-defense and make it a bar to a civil suit? And here, what they noted is in South Carolina, like a range of states, I think Florida and some other places, allow judges to make preliminary findings and say whether self-defense was applicable. And if it was, not make it a jury question, but bar the prosecution outright. And their point is the evidentiary standard used is the same as the civil standard. So that if you have immunity established by a judge in a criminal case in South Carolina, you now have immunity from a civil suit for self-defense in South Carolina. So I thought it was a correct application of how those doctrines should apply by analogy, and a good extension of the self-defense doctrine in South Carolina.
I mean, it's interesting. I just don't understand people who go back to confront the machete-wielding, gun-toting business employee, thinking anything good can come of it. It's like it's the mattress guys. What was it? I don't think so. Out of Texas. I think that was in Texas. Okay, either way, Robert Murdaugh. So this was not. I was following this trial. I was not as thoroughly invested in this trial as were others who were covering it. I want to name a few. I think Legal Bites was covering it. Fairly certain Emily Baker was covering it thoroughly. I want to say Rakeda as well. He's been ordered to get a new trial, and it relates to some. It's objectively improper conduct by the county, the court clerk.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us those who have not been following this case, or the reversal, the order for a new trial. What exactly did the county clerk do?
So in my view, this happens a lot, and a lot of courts keep it hidden. I've had it happen in multiple of my cases that we were able to ultimately out in most of those cases. But the practical reality is the court bailiffs, the court security staff, the court clerks, the court reporters often have a bias and often communicate that bias to the jurors, because the jurors are not as segregated from court staff, and they just assume, our legal system just assumes court staff clearly wouldn't do anything to wrongly influence the jury. And it's like, yeah, they do it all the time. But judges like to keep that secret because it's their own court staff, it's their own bailiffs, their own courtroom, their own court clerks. But this nutty court clerk was so desperate to write a book and have the book be such a good book that she could, quote, own a new lake house and retire, that she felt that would never happen if Murtaugh got acquitted. So that they had to get Murtaugh convicted. So she kept yipping to the jury, then lying about the fact that she was yipping to the jury.
She told the jury not to be fooled by Murdaugh's defense. How on earth? Again, Robert, like, you could be dumb and you could be a criminal, but this is not even thinking past first order criminality. You think no one on the I'm going to double check how that information got disclosed. So she tells the jurors, don't be fooled by the defense, as though that's her role. Okay, sorry, I cut you off.
Correct. They kept implying they have inside information. They speak from a position of authority. I've dealt with this in multiple cases, and it's a real problem. Judges just don't clean it up. They don't discipline it. They don't cabinet it. They don't contain it. They don't control it. I've had cases where judges have engaged in ex parte communications with jurors repeatedly. And and as a lawyer, you're put in a difficult position. You're exposing judicial corruption. That judge will come back and hit you, and his friends and allies will hit you every way they can. So it puts an undue burden on the system. It's a flaw within the system. And this clerk was yipping and yipping and yipping and yipping, then lied about the fact that she was yipping, ultimately got charged with perjury for some of the ways in which she was lying about yipping. But the court system was so busy wanting to cover up this murder conviction obtained by judicial corruption that they ignored it and applied a legal standard that you could almost never prove. And in particular, they required you to breach the privilege and secrecy of the jury deliberation process. You're not allowed, within the rules of evidence in any state that I'm aware of, definitely not at the federal level, to inquire into what the jury, there's an absolute privilege, so that you can't ask about what was said in the jury room. What you can ask about is whether a third party communicated to the jury, but you can't ask about the consequences of it. The jurors admitted they were exposed to her inflammatory commentary constantly. And yet the lower courts were like, well, we're not going to count that because we think Murtaugh's guilty anyway. And two, we asked the jurors, and the jurors said they didn't think it impacted their verdict. So they gave inconsistent testimony in that respect.
Another great one. She's alleged to have said, look at his actions, watch him closely. His body movements were an indication of guilt. Jurors understood that she was implying he was guilty based on body language. Oh, what was here? There's a good one here. On what is it? Comments. Okay, apparently her testimony on a significant day. Hill told jurors, "Looks like the defendant going to testify. This is an important day. This is an epic day." That's not such a big deal. Warning against being confused or convinced by the defense, they're going to say things that will try to confuse you. Don't let them confuse you or throw you off. How does she do this? How does she get into the
Well,
room?
what does it tell you that she did this in the first place? And doesn't that tell
She's done this multiple times in the past.
Yes. And the judges know about it and keep their mouth shut. And the bailiffs know about it and keep their mouth shut. And the court reporters know about it and keep their mouth shut. It's a deep-seated corruption within the judiciary that manages to cover up for itself because any meaningful inquiry or investigation exposes and embarrasses itself. But here, because all of this fully did get documented because of her obsession with writing and publishing a book, and the jurors were talking and so forth, because there were jurors who were also looking forward to, I wonder how much money I could make on this trial. I mean, it's sad, but it's the social media world we now inhabit in the jury world. Everybody can be a celebrity. And so the South Carolina Supreme Court finally realized, okay, the constitutional standard is if there's any extrajudicial influence on a jury outside of the custom and procedures for jury communication, whether by lawyers, by defendants, by witnesses, by judges, by judicial staff, anybody outside that process, that it is presumed to have prejudiced them. And it becomes the burden of the government to disprove the prejudice for which they cannot use jury deliberations. They have to find other sources to prove it. Like, say, for example, the particular juror who heard it never sat on the jury, was an alternate juror, something like that. Mm-hmm. Got excused for other reasons before deliberations occurred. But generally, that's not supposed to work. They were probing into the deliberations, which are not ethically allowed to do, not in the rules of evidence. And to credit the South Carolina Supreme Court, knowing how controversial this reversal would be, they did it anyway. Said the law is clear. Here's the standard. The standard wasn't even followed. Murtaugh needs to be tried. And they did a good job. Remember, we complained at the time that the judge was going out of his way to let in a lot of inflammatory evidence that I thought was more prejudicial than probative. Mm-hmm. Credit to the South Carolina Supreme Court. They took their time to point out a lot of the financial evidence that came in never should have been let in. That it was too far. It was too obvious what was going on. The bottom line is this case blew up because it became perceived as the legal system rigging the trial against Murtaugh. Mm-hmm. And Murtaugh may be as guilty as sin, but that's all the more reason to have a constitutional trial.
He is less definitively guilty than Karmelo Anthony. Like this guy at least denies having done it.
He denies doing it, right? I mean, Anthony's defense is not that he didn't do it. It's that, what defense he could have had would have been self-defense, but he didn't make that defense.
Before we go, I just want to remind everybody right now, if you're watching on the landing page on Rumble, click on the show. Make sure you give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe. Look at this. We got 4 of us, Robert. If you want to tip, download Rumble Wallet because it's a great thing to have regardless of tipping content creators. Invest in crypto at your own risks and peril. Have the ability to carry your money wherever you want in the world without, having borders.
I wonder if anybody tuned in thinking we were going to be doing live commentary from ringside from UFC at the White House.
Robert, we do not, neither you nor I have access. So we have no access to lose and no favors.
You needed about $1 million and a half to get that special UFC ticket.
I saw Betty Johnson.
Bill Clinton could sell the Lincoln bedroom, but only Donald Trump could sell the Lincoln Memorial.
Scan the QR code if you want to tip with crypto. You can do Bitcoin like that, or you can go because of XAUT gold back. How do you do this? Like this. Scan that. Support us at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Robert, while we have everyone here, what do you have coming up this week?
So I'm on the road. So I'm out here until midweek. Then up with my brother in upstate New York watching some World Cup games. Then we go to see Scotland and the Tartan Army play Morocco in Boston, and then back home to Tennessee. So I'm mostly off the grid this week, checking in with occasional work projects, but that's it. So no interviews or anything this week.
And will there be a couple of bourbon with Barnes's?
No bourbons this week. So it'll be I'm on the road and off the grid, only randomly and rarely available.
Enjoy it, because being off the grid is something my wife tells me I have to at least try to do, even if only for a day. Like, you have your, whatever. I can't do it. We'll see. Maybe I'll have to do it one day. What do we have left?
We got California getting sued over, California suing over demanding election fraud must continue. And Sam Bankman-Fried's conviction on appeal is upheld. Was it a good legal decision or was it a politically motivated one? So those are the two cases, and then answering all your questions live. And remember, there are still tickets available, but they are going fast for 1776 Law Center, 1776lawcenter.com. Annual convention, August 1st, August 2nd, Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Objectively big names, people. I mean, if you're into it and you know these guys, you're going to love it. Bring it up here.
Oh, yeah. Jim Webb, Alexander McCorris, Alex Christoforou, Richard Barris, Chase Hughes, Scott Jennings, Scott Rouse, Larry Johnson, Daniel Davis, Greg Hartley. They'll all tell you why the county court reporter has no idea, county court clerk has no idea how to use body language to interpret guilt. That's the behavior language panel, Scott Rouse, Greg Hartley, and Chase Hughes. Chase will be talking about how to avoid and spot the CIA PSYOP. Daniel Davis, a famous military whistleblower, has the show called the podcast called The Deep Dive with Daniel Davis. He'll be talking about ways to reform the military and the possibility of third-party politics. Alexander McCorris and Alex Christoforou of the Duran will be talking about the populist surge around the globe. The Larry Johnson, long-standing ex-CIA analyst, will be describing ways to reform the intelligence community. And then we have Joe Kent may be able to make it as well. Judge Napolitano may be able to make it down. Owen Schroyer might be able to make it in. People from Thomas Massey's office might be able to make it in. We have invites out to a range of other big name folks who may be able to make it. But we have limited cap space. So it's only a limited number of tickets because of the nature of the venue. Can only suit so many people in. And we've only got about 40 tickets left. So if you want to get tickets, get them now at 1776lawcenter.com.
I'm just Googling as you're mentioning the guests. It looks like the one I have the most likelihood of being commensurably tall with is Judge Knapp. Nobody else thus far. It's gonna be amazing. And obviously, I'm coming down. We're gonna launch, or we're gonna have a little boutique, and we're gonna have the hot sauces.
Lord have mercy, hot sauce.
It's gonna be amazing. Robert, let's do the California one here. We'll do Sam Bankman-Fried over on locals. We'll get to all the Rumble chat, the locals chat over there. Okay, so I don't know what municipality it is, and I'm gonna
Shasta County.
So where is that, Shasta County?
It's one of the interior counties.
Okay, and it's
one of those non-coastal counties.
Well, and I was going to say it's obviously a conservative county, or at least one that respects the integrity of elections, and they passed at the county level requirements to show photo ID when you go and vote, as is
crazy
normal.
Things. Crazy things like you have to have an ID in order to vote. That you actually don't send in all your ballots by mail, but you do it in person, and that they actually count the ballots in person. All these weird ideas in California that this local county wanted to do.
This was only for state elections, right? This was not for federal elections. Okay,
and
so the state comes in and sues them. And I understand the argument. I think the state's right. You'll tell me if I'm wrong on the law. The state comes in and says, look, you're infringing on state authority and state election control at your county level, and you simply don't have the legislative authority to do that. And I don't see how they make an argument that they do. Was it? Now I'm mistaken. If
that's going to be the question: is whether they're one of the original charter counties of California, and do they have home rule to determine their own elections? Mm-hmm. They probably do for their own local offices. But you're probably right, at least the California courts are going to construe it, that the state has preempted counties from deciding statewide election rules. But it's insane that the California is suing in order to enforce mass mail-in voting, in order to enforce no voter ID, in order to enforce whatever you do, don't let human beings count the ballots. I mean, it's just insane to me that this is they consider this noble and they're righteous about it, while they're being laughed at around the whole world for being unable to count their votes within a couple of days.
Well, Robert, in fairness, the longer they count, the better. Now look at Nithya Raman; she's catching up to Karen Bass. Spencer Pratt was 6.3% ahead on the day of the election, to the point where Nithya Raman gave a tearful concession speech of sorts. She didn't formally say I concede. but she basically, was referring to her campaign in the past sense. And yet, as Mark Grobert and we talked about it, he called it. They did exactly what he said they were going to do. They stole the election by just getting Skid Row people to get paid $2, $5 a pop, sign a ballot. The governor, I'm on the mayor's race. So anyways, they stole it. Congrats, you did it. And right before our very eyes. All right, Robert, we're going to go over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. This will be on podcast tomorrow. We're going to get to all of the tipped questions over there because I think we like doing this as a community this way instead of me sprinkling them in throughout the stream. I will be live. Oh my goodness. I got Sarah Fields coming on tomorrow. So Sarah Fields was the journalist in the courtroom for Carmelo Anthony during the trial. She's coming on tomorrow.
Wasn't she the one who lied? That's the one who lied, I think. Sarah Uncensored? The one who lied about black jurors getting excluded, why they got excluded. She's
well,
the one
hold
who
on.
accused me of lying when she was lying.
At
so
the time, I think
it's the same one. So that could be a fun. You could do it gently. Do your classic cross-examination.
Well, no, because I think
are you sure that's really true? Do you want to correct that just a little bit?
On, Sarah.
Or are you a liar?
Is it Sarah is censored? Robert,
is censored or something like that.
And I think even at the time,
total fraud.
First of all, Sarah, this is not how we're starting off tomorrow. I think
exactly.
Before then,
Viva's much nicer and gentler. He'll let you dig your own grave.
I think it was
ask Julie Kelly. I think she's still digging her grave.
Just haven't heard from Julie in a while. No, I think Sarah made an honest mistake, and I think I said at the time,
she may have.
Wrong versus lied is different. Okay, but she's coming on tomorrow. It's going to be amazing. We're gonna go over. Now we're gonna. Hopefully we don't get. We got a raid. Sorry, hold on. We got to go raid. See who's up here. I think Nerdrotic is live. I also kind of want to watch.
Nerdrotic's always great. He was. I think he said the most recent. What was it? The new movie. Oh, I think he said the new Star Wars movie's not so good.
Who watches new movies? And new movies all suck. Let me just see here. We got.
Spider Noir is a pretty decent TV show. You see that with Nicolas Cage? It's like film noir meets Spider-Man. Pretty cool.
It doesn't look like there's anything that's going to be really on point in terms of content. We're going to go raid Nerdrotic, and this might, we'll do that, and everybody will stay here.
Yeah, Nerdrotic is cool.
He's good. It'll be, but you can stay here, opt out, raid Nerdrotic. I'm going to say hi. Come over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com, Spotify to get the podcast tomorrow, including the after show, confirming raid. And if you want to go talk movies, Viva Raid Booyah. And tomorrow's going to be a good show, so tune in for that.
Ask Nerdrotic, why does he love pineapple on pizza? That's always a good question.
Because it's rage bait. I mean, first of all, it's actually not that bad, but I know people say it. The best.
I forget which side. He's either on that's horrendous or that's great. I forget which side he's on.
Pineapple is sweet. There's a lot of sugar. It's just like tomato sauce. I mean, tomatoes.
With ham, it's actually pretty good with Canadian.
Yeah, that's ham and cheese. It's freaking delicious. But ham or bacon on everything.
For me, you'll get some pizza people go crazy on you. You say, I like pineapple on my pizza.
I don't.
Want a little jalapeno? It's even better.
We got this. Okay, good. Now the raid has kicked in. What was I just about to say before we did that? I absolutely forgot what I was going to say. Let me just make sure that I didn't miss any. There's one Rumble rant, which we're going to do you can opt out, people. That's what I was going to say. So just come on over. We're going to update in exactly 2 seconds right after we read this. We got State Department coming from CK Dolores says, let me bring it up. State Department gave $50 million to WHO and UN. What the F is that? Thought we were out of who? Who the hell else owns us beside his? What's happening?
Rubio took it over, and he's reversing RFK's policies on vaccines in the World Health Organization and USAID, and he is getting money back into those organizations.
Did Robert? I don't want to ask you this because you might be closer to actual information.
Oh, the rumors are not true as far as I know. In terms of Bobby Kennedy's going to stay there and get as much done as he can.
All right, now we are
up. Push him out. He ain't going out.
That's what I was going to say. I don't know, and I don't know if you had information that you may not want to disclose.
Oh, I did want to give a commemoration to my good friend who passed away this past week, Warner Mendenhall. Great lawyer, great advocate. Came from the Democratic Labor School. So he got agitated at the local politicians. It's like, this is a bunch of crap you guys are doing. So he's like, okay, I'll run for office. So he runs for office, figures out ways to beat up on the corrupt machine. So the corrupt machine finds legalistic mechanisms to screw him over. So what does Warner do? He's like, I'm going to go to law school, figure out what all these legal shenanigans are up to. Goes to law school, comes back, sues them, nails them for a bunch of corruption and fraud, and goes into, He came from the Labor Democratic side via a group in Akron, Ohio. Same, LeBron James home, old industrial town. Stood up against fraudulent elections going back to 2004 when he thought George W. Bush stole Ohio. He would give you long lectures on that to this day, by the way. Then COVID came around. He's like, this is a bunch of crap. They're trying to shut down small businesses. They're trying to take away our medical autonomy, our medical freedom. Leads the fight against lockdowns, leads the fight against vaccine mandates, creates Freedom Council, defends Grace Shara, who in my view was murdered by the hospital in Wisconsin and got away with it, unfortunately, due to some of the instructions that were given in that case. But Warner's a legend, one of the great human beings. He no matter what the circumstances, he was always optimistic. It didn't matter how ridiculous and insane the obstacles were. He was like my dad. His smile there, he was always smiling. The Warner, when he was smiling up until the very end. That's Warner Mendenhall. That it was, I used to say, they like the song. He came in like a hurricane, but he came in like a hurricane in a positive, favorable way. Great, good husband, good father, good man, great lawyer, all the above. Stood up and fought for underdogs. Was co-counsel with me in Brooke Jackson's case. Last time I saw him was in New Orleans because I was sick, he got to make the oral argument. And I'm glad he did get to make the whole oral argument. His last oral argument I think he ever got to make in court was on behalf of Brooke Jackson and the COVID injured against the COVID vaccine and the pharma fraud by Pfizer. So a great human being, great man, a legend of a person, a legend of a personality. And Bobby Kennedy, that's what it reminded me, sent me his compliments. He said Warner was one of the best. That if you want to be a lawyer, you could find fewer and better inspirations than Warner Mendenhall. He went back to lawyer as an older person in life, as is coming from a more blue collar business occupation, from small business on, and he never ever let the obstacles get him down. It's like you realize we're taking on Pfizer, we're taking on the entire medical establishment, we're trying to expose the greatest global fraud in public health history. I was like, this might be a little uphill, Warner. He's like, nah, this is going to happen. We're going to get this. We're going to do this. And then we're going to go here. We're going to go there. And then we're going to go over here. So, you couldn't leave the room not feeling optimistic and enthusiastic. So great credit to Warner. My condolences to his family and his friends and associates. But he will always be well remembered by those who ever got the privilege to know him.
That's beautiful, Robert. I knew of this. I saw the Bourbon with Barnes earlier this week, where you eulogized him as well, and very young. It's a shame. Okay, we're updating. We're going to premium and we're going to locals. Everybody will have access to this tomorrow, so no complaining people. Thank you all for being here. If you're not going to stick around, go to Nerdrotic. The fights start soon, so at least we'll be doing updates. I thought the prelims started at 6 or 5 o'clock. I guess.
So did I, yeah.
So, and we'll be following it up. We're going to local.
I had to get that one last bribe in. One last special ticket. Come on. Yeah, another million. Hey, Jared's got to get his piece. Don Jr.'s got to get his piece. Let's make sure everybody gets their piece now, everybody.
All right, we're updating. We're updating people. Come to Rumble Premium and locals right now. Here we go.